think this out. Like, how's this all going to work? All right. Welcome back to HPP, the podcast that covers college basketball and the NBA draft inside and out. I am Rich Harrison. Thank you for joining us again. Today, I am joined by Jake Kopstick. Again, 2 episodes in 1 week. What a great, whoa, I'm so happy. How you doing, Jake?
I'm good. I'm hanging in there. I'm working a lot. But hey, we're less than 5 weeks away from college basketball, Rich. And that I think is what's keeping me going right now. That coffee and unfortunately some Monster Energy.
It actually is about a month away.
Yeah.
About a month from I think it was a month from yesterday the season will start.
Yeah. Can't wait.
Me neither. So I want to ask, who do you play this weekend? Or do you have
We are home against Georgetown.
Right. You said that last time. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I've never actually seen Georgetown play football.
I didn't know they had a football team until I started working for Penn last year. So I'm right with you.
I didn't know they had a football team until maybe 3-4 years ago. Maybe they didn't have a football team before that. Who knows?
They probably shouldn't have a football team, to be honest with you, because their turf absolutely sucks. Like 20 years old. It's horrible. I don't know how people don't get hurt left and right on that.
Oh, my goodness.
But yeah, it's like non-scholarship, D1, AA. I don't believe they do scholarships there. So I don't know how much money gets put into that program.
I wonder if my alma mater could beat them. Bet you they could.
What's that?
D2 East Stroudsburg.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
maybe on a good year you could catch them.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely been ranked in the top 10 before, and sent some guys to the pros. Not recently though, but actually our basketball program is now better than our football program, at least of late. All right, so before we preview the Mountain West Conference, I'm going to play an interview that I did with Tyson Degenhart, who plays for Boise State in the Mountain West Conference. Our first guest today is Boise State forward Tyson Degenhart, the 2022 Mountain West Rookie of the Year and a 2023 first-team All-Mountain West selection. Last season, Tyson averaged 14.2 points, 5.3 rebounds, 1.8 assists per game, while shooting 54% from the floor, 33% from deep, and 68% from the free throw line. He also ranked in the top 5 of the Mountain West for effective field goal percentage, offensive rating, win shares, and plus minus. Tyson, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I am good. I've been waiting all day for this interview. Seriously, I'm looking forward to it. We never had a Boise State player on before, so this is exciting. So how was your summer? I know the team went on a tour of Canada. What was that like?
It was a ton of fun. Having this foreign trip was a blessing for us, and having 3 new incoming freshmen and 3 incoming transfers. So it was really great for us to just have a couple games in July and August to bond as a group and get some guys some minutes who haven't played in 2 years. And overall, it was just a great trip for us to, build on and have a successful year.
Okay. For someone like yourself, grew up in Spokane, Washington, now going to school in Big Sky Country, it probably wasn't much of a trip, was it? Or were you on the east side of Canada?
No, we were in Vancouver and Kamloops. So
okay, so
it wasn't too bad at all. We just went through Bellingham, up to Vancouver, played 2 games there, and then drove to Kamloops, and then day after drove back down to the border and made it back.
All right. And did you get to interact with many of the locals? I'm just curious, at that time was about when the World Cup was going to tip off, and the Canadian national team was, considered one of the favorites. Were people in Canada talking about basketball in terms of the World Cup?
Not that I saw, but it could have been. I just really didn't see much out in the streets. We could have been in a part that doesn't really watch a lot of basketball in like our part of downtown Vancouver, but it was definitely fun to see some of the World Cup like throughout the throughout that tournament.
Yeah, it was great basketball. It was awesome. All right, so did you do anything else especially fun or interesting in the off season?
Well, I mean, besides the Canada trip, not much. Just really tried to hone in on the fundamentals. Really, just dial those in because the small things make the big things, and really focus on my shot release and just making sure I get back to my regular 4 position this year.
Okay, that's okay. Great answer. Because we're going to talk more about that. First of all, you look thinner. Have you dropped? You look a lot thinner, actually.
Yeah, I was about 243-ish last year, and I'm down to 235. So skimmed off about 10, and I feel great. This is probably the best I felt, throughout my 3 years of college so far.
Okay. So in terms of your game, you talked about working on fundamentals. Was there any specific particular area where you knew that you were going to need to be better at this season that you focused on?
I definitely need to be better on the 3-point line, just being able to shoot it better. I know my percentage wasn't very good last year compared to my freshman year, and just working on trying to hone in on the fundamentals of the shot, make sure everything's crisp so I can get back up to that 40% mark.
Right. So let's talk about the team a little bit, and I'm going to kind of review for the listeners what's going on. In both of your seasons of Boise, the team has made the NCAA tournament. Last year, I predicted you guys were going to beat Northwestern in the first round, and it was a close contest throughout. It appeared to me that the turning point was when Marcus Shaver tweaked his ankle, late in the first half. And, to me, nothing against any other player on the team, but to me, Marcus was kind of, being that super senior, was kind of the heart and soul of the team. And you guys never seem to quite recover from that. I know you don't want to use injuries as an excuse, but did you feel like, when it was all said and done, man, if Marcus was 100%, I think we could have got that game?
It's definitely something you think about. It was hard to see Shave go down with that ankle injury because it is last year. You wanted to go out on a high note. And, he'd been battling injuries all year, and it was just hard to see him not be 100% throughout, most of the year, and have his senior year go out that way. So, I mean, if in hindsight, I would love to have him 100% and see how that game would go.
Yeah. And as it was still pretty darn close. So yeah, good on you for that. So moving on to this season, in my opinion, San Diego State is not a lock to win that conference, to win the Mountain West. I believe the Broncos, Nevada, New Mexico will definitely be in the mix. And I think Utah State and UNLV, they got a lot of new faces, but I think they could be very dangerous as well. Your team has lost 3 key players to graduation / the pros. All of them are playing for pro teams. That's Marcus and Najee Smith and center Lucas Milner. Your additions, you mentioned you got new guys, include sophomore guard Roddy Anderson from UC San Diego, and you also have freshman wing Chris Lockett, probably your highest ranked freshman coming in. So last season, Shaver and Smith were your top 2 rebounders. Milner was your best shot blocker. How do you replace their production, and who takes over as the lead guard?
I think Roddy comes in, will definitely help out with that lead guard spot. Obviously, Jace Whiting, a freshman last year, had a really great season, coming up to bench, being that backup 1. And then as far as the shot blockers, we have transfer Cam Martin, big guy from Kansas, as well as a transfer Omar Stanley from St. John's, and they're both very athletic, can block shots, and can kind of fill that role. And then as scoring wise, I mean, we have great scorers. Andrew Meadows, a freshman who can score it. Myself, Chibuzo, and Max can all score it. So I think we have a really balanced team, and where we lost some stuff last year, we're going to gain with the transfers and freshmen that we got coming in.
Okay. One of the unique things I thought about the Broncos last season was your balanced scoring. You had 5 guys in double figures, in between like 10 and 15 points per game. Do you think that will be the case this season? And stylistically, do you think the team is going to be similar or different?
I think scoring wise, we look up and down a roster. You could have 8 or 9 guys that could be your leading scorer each and every night. So I think that makes us something that, we really worked on in the transfer portal, is getting that depth that we needed, because we just didn't have it last year. And what was the second part of the question? I totally spaced it.
Stylistically, do you think are you gonna be similar? Are you gonna have a similar approach, or do you expect, sometimes teams get a lot smaller or a lot bigger, and they expect to play a little different, or do you guys expect to play roughly the same?
I think it'll be similar. Obviously, adding some big guy depth is huge for us, and I won't have to play the 5 as I did last year, but I still think we're going to space the floor. I think we'll be a little bit better in transition. We got I think Roddy's very quick and can get the ball down the floor in a hurry. He's a very willing passer. So I think we'll be a little bit faster this year, but overall, stylistically, I think we should be pretty similar to last year.
Okay. So you've mentioned a couple times, or you've hinted that your role is going to change, and going back to your natural position at power forward. What exactly do you think that means for you on the court? Last year you really were excellent in the post, but you also got, a fair amount of opportunities on the perimeter. How do you think your game's going to be different on both ends of the court?
I think it'll be different
in terms of role.
Offense, I think it'll be a great court spacer. Obviously, I can shoot the 3 and working on that in between game and getting by guys and getting to the rim. And then obviously we'll still use the post up, because it's still going to be effective when I'm going against 4s instead of 5s. And defensively, we'll, be able to guard ball screens the same way and be able to switch a little bit. So my role will change a little bit, but overall, just try to be the leader of the team and, lead us to the promised land of March and winning some games there.
Right. All right. So all in all, we've mentioned a lot of things that are changing. What specifically gives you the confidence that the Broncos can make it to the tournament for the 3rd straight year, and perhaps even advance further than you did last season? And, specifically, is there a specific player that stands out, or you think you have better depth or better athleticism? What is it that you think gives you confidence that I think we're going to be better this year?
I think the depth definitely helps. You look at San Diego State last year; they didn't have a guy average over 30 minutes a game, and they were able to play 9 guys. And I think we're going to kind of take that similar role of playing 8 or 9 guys each night and not let those minute totals pile up. And along with that, we just have great players and great chemistry, and we just play for one another, and we're very unselfish. So I think those things will help us a lot down the stretch.
Okay. On the court, Coach Rice, he looks pretty intense. What's he like behind the scenes, and how has he helped your development?
He's the most genuine guy you'll ever meet. He was one of the first guys to, really believe in me, and that's one of the reasons why I love coming here. Is he was one of the guys that told me, hey, you're going to be a really good college basketball player, and you're going to play beyond college. And he was kind of the first guy to really turn my mindset around. Hey, I can really do this. And I enjoy playing golf with him in the summer, and he's just a really genuine guy that loves sports, loves all of it, and it's been great to build a relationship on and off the court with him.
So you're an avid golfer. I love golf.
A little bit, yeah. I'm trying to get better, but I still slice the ball too much.
Little inside out swing.
Yep.
Yeah,
working on that.
It is, so many people look at the game and they think it's so simple, and then you get out there and it's like, damn, this is hard.
Yeah, you can think you can be swinging in your house and think, oh, my swing's right there, and you get out to the course and it's something completely different.
Yep, and every day is different. Unlike basketball where you have the fixed conditions of the inside. It could be the humidity, could be the wind. Yeah. But anyway, we'll get back to basketball. Actually, we're not going to get back to basketball. My last questions concern your off the court stuff. So I hear that you have some interesting side projects, including the Degenhart Dozen. And you also have your own live show. So tell me about these ventures.
So the first one is with a pastry shop called Pastry Perfection in Boise, and I'd heard the idea around of like Degenhart donuts. I'm like, man, that's a good idea. So we have an in-house NIL guy, Mike Walsh, and I talked to him about it, and he found a place that was willing to do it, and it's been awesome. You know, it's my dozen of donuts. It's 4 maple bars, 4 glaze, and 4 chocolate bars with sprinkles. So
Oh
that's
my
my
goodness.
dozen.
You're making
Keep
me
it pretty-
hungry.
Keep it pretty simple. They're very good donuts. My roommates love them when I bring them home. And then my live show, I partnered with Idaho Central Credit Union, a credit union in the area, and they partnered with one of the media outlets that covers Boise State athletics. And so in the off season, we did 2 shows a month, and then during the season, we'll do 1 show a month. So it's been really fun to go live and interact with the fans and get to interview some really amazing people.
So what kind of guests? What kind of guests do you have? Like teammates or opponents? Or?
Teammates, coaches. We got our athletic director on there, and then we had some other athletes. So in our last episode, I had one of my teammates, one of the star volleyball players, and one of the star soccer players. So it's been great so far, and the viewership's been great, and it's just a lot of fun, and people seem to like it. So we got to keep it going.
And it's a live stream.
It is, yeah. So
how can I find it?
If I'll tweet out a link, so the next show is planned to be on October 24th, and on my Twitter, I'll post something about it. It's a YouTube link. It'll be on the Bronco Nation News YouTube page, and that's where you'll find it.
All right. I think I'm already following you on Twitter, but if not, I'll get it before you leave. I had another question. Shoot, I don't remember. Goodness gracious, you were saying something. Oh, I know. Have you ever had Max Rice on the show?
I have not. He's definitely one of our guests that we'll probably get to in the season.
Okay.
He's definitely on our list, but
I just have this image of you saying, whoa, 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 this is my show. You don't have a green light here.
He does have a on the court, that's for sure.
One thing you know about coaches' sons, they will always get their shots up. I don't know if you know this, but the 2 leading scorers in college ball history, Pete Maravich and Davis, Antoine Davis
from Detroit, yeah.
Yeah, from Mercy, both coaches' sons. So they always have a green light.
There's something to that. You have to look into it.
I appreciate your time. I want to thank you for being on the show. I wish you and the team the best this season, and I hope we can do this down the road.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate the time.
Yeah, it was fun. All right, so it was great to talk to Tyson, and now we will do our conference previews, including the Tyson's conference, the Mountain West. So bear with me as I run over what has taken place, the summary of last season. San Diego State won the regular season title by 2 games over Utah State and Boise State. 4 Mountain West teams made the NCAA tournament. San Diego State received the auto bid by defeating Utah State in the conference tourney. And that was one of 9 straight victories to end the season, including NCAA tournament matchups versus Alabama and Creighton. The Aztecs' run ended in the NCAA championship game versus UConn. The other 3 Mountain West teams to make the conference, make the NCAA tourney were Utah State, Boise State, and Nevada, and all were eliminated in their first matchup. So in terms of the NIT, New Mexico was eliminated in the first round. They were thumped by Utah Valley at home at the pit. And San Jose State, a team that actually had more conference wins than New Mexico State, was not invited. That was a little odd, but I'm sure San Jose State wasn't too happy about that. Okay, so let's talk about who did what in the conference in terms of teams. New Mexico was the best offensive team last year, averaging 80.9 points per game, which was 12th in the country, followed by Utah State at 78.2. Those 2 teams also topped the Mountain West in offensive efficiency, with them flipping order. Utah State led the way with a offensive rating of 111.6, which was 17th in Division I. On the defensive side, in terms of points allowed, San Diego State led the Mountain West Conference, giving up just 63.5 points per game, which was 27th in the country, followed by Boise State, which gave up 64.6. The same two teams led the conference in defensive efficiency, San Diego State and Boise State in that order. New Mexico State led the conference in pace, while San Jose State was the lowest, and in fact, they were the 13th lowest in Division I in terms of pace. Other interesting stats: Utah State topped the conference in 3-point percentage, 38.7 as a team, which was the 10th best in the nation. San Jose State led the Mountain West in rebounding percentage in 56%, which was 6th in the country. Air Force had the distinction of leading the conference in assist percentage at 64.9, which was 4th in Division I, but they are also last in the conference for turnover percentage at 16.4. Air Force was one of 4 teams in the conference to rank in the top 20 of the country for assist percentage, which included Colorado State, Utah State, and Nevada. The lesson to be learned here is this is a conference where they like to move the ball and work for the good shot. And lastly, UNLV topped the Mountain West in both steal percentage and block percentage. And that could continue this year based on the size and athletes they have, though we'll have to see what happens with Caleb Boone. All right, Jake, what do you make of the coaching change? As far as I know, there's only one in this conference, and that's Utah State's Danny Sprinkle replaces Ryan Odom.
Yeah, so you have Ryan Odom that leaves for VCU. I've spoken very glowingly about that hire, that it's one of my favorite of the offseason, and both now and long term. I think it will be one of the best of this offseason when we go back and we reflect on this last coaching cycle. And they bring in Danny Sprinkle from Montana State. The last 2 seasons, the Bobcats have made the NCAA tournament, winning the Big Sky, winning one of the ugliest games I've ever seen against Northern Arizona that went to, I believe, double overtime in the Big Sky championship game. And that was Northern Arizona. I think their 4th game of 4 nights or 3rd game in 3 nights, regardless. This game was like 56-54, something like that, in double overtime. I mean, they just played one of the ugliest games I've ever seen. But regardless, they bring in Danny Sprinkle, very good coach in that conference, had a lot of success there. And I think coming in right behind him, coming in right behind Ryan Odom, this is a very, very good hire here. I mean, you look at the last 3 coaches at Utah State, it's been Craig Smith, Ryan Odom, and now Danny Sprinkle. At the mid-major level in the Mountain West, that's pretty much as good as you can do, in my opinion. So he has to bring in a lot of people, obviously with a lot of people, a lot of players departing. Some going to follow Ryan Odom. You have Stephen Ashford is going to Creighton. Guys going elsewhere, some older guys that graduated, but I still think they will be a pretty competitive team, and long term. So this is a really good program at the mid-major level that people have had success at. It's a very logical next step for Danny Sprinkle to move into a potential Power 5 job. So only one coaching change in the conference, but I think a damn good one at that.
Yeah. All right, so we'll talk about the teams in order that they finished last year. That means we talk about the national champion runner-up, San Diego State. This is a team that loses some significant pieces, including Defensive Player of the Year, Nathan Mensah, who's now on an NBA roster. I forget exactly what team. And they lose scoring guard Matt Bradley, and they also lose Keshawn Johnson to Arizona. He's a power forward, big guy. Adam Seiko, 3-point specialist, graduated. And how do you say Arop's first name?
Agwek Arop.
Yeah, Agwek Arop, who, if I remember correctly, was a defensive specialist, was he not?
Yeah, he was their glue guy last year.
Right.
Arop was their glue guy, and he was one of the best glue guys. He was a star in his role at the end of last season.
Right. And so when you look at that, you look at those 5 losses, that's a starting lineup right there. That's a starting lineup that could compete in a lot of conferences. But the cupboard is not bare. They bring in or they bring back, point guard Darian Trammell, combo guard Lamont Butler, who hit that big shot in the Final Four, wing Micah Parrish, big power forward center Jaden Ledee, and also Miles Bird, who was a seldom used freshman, but I believe he was a 3-star coming in, top 200 guy. He hardly played last year, but should play a significant amount this year. And from the portal, they bring in Jay Powell, power forward for Campbell. I'll talk about him in a second. They also bring in Reese Waters, who was a fairly high recruit from USC. He's a wing. And also they bring in freshman, top 160 guy, 3-star guy, BJ Davis, who's a point guard. Jay Powell is probably going to be the most critical of this group because San Diego State right now is kind of hurting in terms of size. And interestingly, Powell recently injured his ankle, so he's supposed to be ready for the beginning of the season, but he's currently out. But at Campbell last year, he averaged a little over 12 points per game. He shot 58% from the floor. He also could make some threes. He shot 33% from deep on about 2.5 attempts per game, 73% from the free throw line, nearly 7 rebounds per game, and 1.5 blocks per game. Also not a bad passer, about 1.5 assists per game, and also almost 1 steal per game. So Powell is a guy they're really counting on. He's not huge. He's 6'9". It says 190. I think he's a little bigger than that. Not height wise, but weight wise. So what do you make of the San Diego State team?
So I still think they'll be very good. They will have another chance to win this conference. But yeah, you hit it right on the head there. Jay Powell's a big swing piece here because you look at their losses and sure, they lose a big time scorer in Matt Bradley, but they bring back a scorer in Lamont Butler, a guy in Darian Trammell. If you remember that Alabama game, they really needed Darian Trammell. Like it was his offense in the second half kept them in that game when Alabama could have stretched it out and won.
And then the whole tournament, overall, Trammell and Butler were more effective scorers than Bradley.
Oh, yeah, they were true. And it seemed like that was almost the case all year because you remember this team, Rich, they didn't have a double-digit scorer, a guy who averaged double digits. And sure, Matt Bradley could go off for you every night. And 2 years ago, he had to because there was really no other scoring options. But this was a really balanced team, which is why they're still going to be good because they were deep. They're bringing back a lot. To me, though, the biggest thing about this team is losing Nathan Mensah on that rim protection. It's not like you just lost a good rim protector. You lost a slightly above average rim protector. You are losing one of the best of the last couple of years. A guy who won multiple Defensive Player of the Years in the Mountain West, one of the best shot blockers in this conference, the country. That's what the question mark is to me. Can Jay Powell fix that? Is that something that DeMarshe Johnson, who along with Miles Bird, did not really play much last year because of the depth and the experience of this team? So rim protection number one, because Nathan Mensah is not someone who you simply just easily replace. His size, his length was legitimate power conference with, his production as well. Scoring wise, I think they'll actually be okay though when you talk about bringing Reese Waters from USC. Kind of slide in there and take over the Matt Bradley role. So scoring wise, I think they might actually be a little bit better, potentially. Right. But yeah, it's rim protection that kind of is a swing thing here. This team is going to defend on the perimeter, especially with Trammell and Lamont Butler coming back. They're going to hound point guards. They're going to fight over screens, even as smaller guys. The defense is going to be there. How they want to play. They're going to walk the ball up the court. That's why they were the ultimate matchup for Alabama. They're going to walk the ball up the court. They're going to grind you down on the defensive end. You know what a Brian Butler team is going to be. And even with the losses, the way they play, the defense they have, the returners that are still going to be playing for the Aztecs, they are still going to be right there. They will probably still make the NCAA tournament and have a chance to win a couple games. Like I said earlier in or last episode, there's a team that did not win a game in the NCAA tournament under Brian Dutcher, and they find themselves in the national championship game playing for it all. They're still going to be very good. I'm glad that Brian Dutcher got his flowers and people realize that he's one of the best coaches in the sport. This team will be right there again and can potentially win this conference.
You'd feel so much better about this team if Kashad Johnson hadn't transferred to Arizona, because he would bring more a presence in the paint, mostly on the defensive side.
Right, and also rebounding as well. I mean, think of the size this team had with Mensah and Johnson, Arope, Ledee.
Right, and they would play Ledee and or Johnson with Mensah.
Exactly, they would kill teams on the boards. I mean, like most nights, obviously the defense is going to be there, and the offense came and went sometimes with the Aztecs, but you knew they were going to play defense, and you knew they were going to rebound. And if you do those two things, you can survive a bad shooting night. If you're dependent on just making threes, if you're dependent on just scoring and not playing defense, you really have one way to win. They were in a lot of games they probably shouldn't have, and won a lot of games that they shouldn't have because they defended and they rebounded. And if they did that, they gave themselves a chance to win. So the rebounding as well, I still think they'll be fine there. But the rebounding last year was really another strength of this team.
Last
year they're losing so much size.
Last year with Johnson, Ledee, and Mensah, they could put out, a lineup that was bigger and as big as strong as any in the country. Like an NBA like front line. Just won't have that. Especially won't have it in terms of. They won't have it in terms of girth or length this year. All right. So let's talk about Danny Sprinkle's Utah State team. And boy, to talk about starting from scratch. Utah State loses 7 good players, including Stephen Ashworth, who goes to Creighton, excellent point guard. Matt Shulga and Sean Bairstow go to VCU. Taylor Funk goes to the NBA right now. He's on the training camp roster. Daniel Akins, he was 6th man of the year in the conference. He's playing for a professional team in Europe. Ryland Jones, a former top 100 guy, point guard. He's transferred to Samford. And Trevin Dorius, who gave them really good minutes at center at times last year, he goes to Utah Valley. So, wow. So nobody that I could think of significance. I'm not saying that there's not some red shirt out there that's, but I can't think of anybody who's really returning that I can mention. But Mr. Sprinkle, Coach Sprinkle, has really brought in a whole host of interesting players. Ian Martinez, a shooting guard from Maryland. He's an ultra athletic guy who's never quite lived up to his potential, but man, this guy can jump out of the gym. They have Nigel Burris, who was he's a forward from Idaho. He was the Big Sky Freshman of the Year. Really nice looking numbers on him. He could score. He's efficient. They have a former very high recruit in Max. And how do you say Max's name?
Agbanpolo,
who's never lived up to his billing. He's a wing. He's about 6'9", but he has guard-like skills. Hopefully he can put it together now this year. They also bring in center Jackson Grant from Washington. Of course, Coach Sprinkle brings in 2 of his better guys from Montana State, including point guard Darius Brown II, who was the Big Sky's Defensive Player of the Year. And he also brings in power forward Great Osborne, who was the 6th man of the year in the Big Sky. But also he's a really good defender, can block some shots. And they bring in a couple other interesting recruits. But yeah, this team is starting from scratch. But if you look at the guys that I just mentioned, they already have the makings of a good lineup. The biggest question to me, looking over Yeah, I mean, I think this team could be very competitive. It's just, can you get all those pieces to work together the first year?
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. And then you look at some of the I was going to say Iowa State. I meant to say Montana State. Some of the Montana State guys coming over. Danny Sprinkle's going to bring some guys from his Big Sky teams, but is that going to be able to work in the Mountain West, which is consistently one of the best mid-major conferences, and maybe won't be as good as they were last year, but still will be very good. So yeah, are the pieces going to fit here? It's Danny Sprinkle's first year in a better conference. I agree that they'll be competitive, but these pieces are going to need to fit. We're going to need to see if these Montana State guys can play up in the Mountain West, which I believe that they will be, but still remains to be seen when you're going to dump levels. So I think they'll be competitive. I don't know if I'm ready to say they'll finish nearly as high as they did last year.
No.
But there's a lot to. I do think there's a good amount to like here with the pieces.
Yeah, agreed. And one thing I like that Sprinkle has done is, a lot of these guys are underclassmen, or at least half of them, and like guys like Burris and Osborne are only sophomores, I believe, or maybe I could be wrong about that, but they're definitely not like fifth year guys. Most of these guys are not fifth year guys. They got some more years to give. So I really think when he brought these guys in, he was thinking long term, and I think that's a good way to do. There's no sense trying to be competitive in a very good basketball conference right away. So I think that was a smart move. All right, so let's talk about Boise State. Boise State kind of loses their heart and soul in Marcus Shaver. He was their point guard, combo guard, a really good defender. If you remember when they lost in the NCAA tournament, that game was pretty competitive until Shaver turned his ankle, and then he wasn't very effective in the second half, and the team kind of fell apart. But they also lose power forward Najee Smith to European. He turned pro, he graduated, now playing in Europe. And center Lucas Milner also graduated and is playing in Europe. Of course, they bring back Tyson Degenhart, and help me with the next guy.
Kabuzo Agbo.
Kabuzo Agbo, who's actually a very young wing. I think he's a sophomore or a junior. And Max Rice, the coach's son. And from the portal, they brought in some guys, not super excited about, but I'd say the best is probably Roddy Anderson, a combo guard from UC San Diego. They also brought in Omar Staley, a power forward from St. John's, and they have a nice, promising freshman in wing Chris Lockett, who's a top 200 guy.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Leon Rice. Like his X's and O's and what he does there. I do think they'll take a step back as well. Losing Marcus Shaver really is a killer there. But they'll get Tyson Degenhart back, who I think he's ready to explode this year, continue to build on what he did last year as one of the best players in this conference, and continue to get even better. Max Rice is a funny guy to watch play because he's not the fastest, not the quickest, but man, like that guy will just shoot the lights out, make some. He's probably got the ultimate green light from his dad, who's probably just seen him his whole life, like put up those no yes shots. That to me is like Max Rice's game right there. Not exactly in love with these transfers, especially Omar Stanley, a guy that didn't play a ton for St. John's last year and just wasn't. I said it a million times, just wasn't a fan of that team in general and the way that they played and were coached. So I believe they'll take a bit of a step back, losing Shaver and Najee Smith. But hey, you still have Max Rice, you still have Tyson Degenhart there, can step out and hit a three for you, do a lot of different things for you on offense. They'll still be competitive, especially with Leon Rice as well. Yeah, they're not going to have the year they had 2 years ago where they win the Mountain West regular season and the conference tournament, have an all-time, season. but they'll still be very good, and we'll have another chance to go back to what will that be, their third straight NCAA tournament if they make it next year,
Yeah.
and certainly make it again behind Tyson Degenhart.
Okay. All right. So now we'll talk about Nevada, who loses freshman of the year in the Mountain West, Darian Williams, who transferred to Texas Tech. They also lose Will Baker, center, to LSU, and Tre Pettigrew, a combo guard who went to Bradley. He was a former high recruit. But they bring back Jared Lucas, friend of the show, shooting guard, combo guard. He's the leading returner in three-pointers made, 79, shot 38% from deep. Also the leading returner for a shooter. He gets fouled a lot, and he's the conference's leading returner in that category. He had 175 free throw attempts last year and made 86% of his free throws. Also coming back is another friend of the show, Keenan Blackshear, a combo guard. He's bigger than Lucas. He's not as good as a shooter, but probably a better defender, rebounder. And they also bring in a guest we're going to have on later in the show, Tre Coleman, who's an all-defensive selection. KJ Himes, who was off to a great start last year, center. Shot blocker. He will be back and healthy this year. And they had Nick Davidson, who ended up playing probably more than expected last year because Will Baker is soft as a pillow, and they needed somebody to stand up to people in the paint, and they brought in Nick, who's basically a kind of an energy guy, not a ton of basketball talent, but he's got the size, got the girth, the muscle, and will hustle. Also, another guy who went down early in the season was Hunter McIntosh, combo guard. They might go with three guards as their starting lineup, and they bring back Tyler Powell, who's a former high recruit. And they also bring in Tyler Pope, who's a kind of a round mound of rebound type of guy from Tulane, and two high recruits in center Jazz Gardner and point guard Tyler Rollison. So this team, a lot of pieces have to fit. You got two guys that had, barely played last year because of injuries. Got another guy who was a freshman who didn't get on the court much. And now you got two highly regarded freshmen coming in and a transfer. But you have Lucas, Blackshear, Coleman, who've been there for a while and really play well together. So, yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I think they'll certainly be up there to grab another tournament appearance. I mean, they were literally the last team in the field last year. Did not have a great showing, but when we talked to Jared, he said that, pretty sure the exact quote was, the percentages on like the scouting report did not match the percentages that Arizona State ended up shooting in that game. I mean, they were just not getting anything that they wanted to on offense. But regardless, even with the loss of Darian Williams, who's moving on to play for Grant McCaslin at Texas Tech, I was not really in love with Will Baker. I mean, offensively, it was a nice piece to have, but now you get a big physical presence in KJ Himes coming back from injury that can fill that role for you, and Tyler Pope, as you mentioned, a round mound of rebound guy, a smaller guy who will still give you the ability and the impact of a big forward. So I do like this team. Anytime you can bring back your 1-2 punch at guard with a scorer in Jared Lucas and a guy in Keenan Blackshear, you can kind of do it all. That's huge. That's huge. So look, Steve Alford did not get a 10-year contract here in Nevada for nothing. They expect him to continue to string together tournament appearances and have a lot of success. The great thing about Nevada, and it's kind of been like this for a while, especially under Musselman as well, they have a very, very good home court advantage at the Lawler Event Center. Very hard place for teams to play. San Diego State went there and lost. I believe New Mexico went there and lost as well. Just a really, really tough place for opponents to play, and they're going to need that in the Mountain West if they want to get back to the tournament. So if this is a multi-bid league, which I think it absolutely will be again, Nevada's certainly in the running to be one of those teams. And if that's the case, maybe they could end up stealing a game as well. Like I said, you bring back Jared Lucas, you bring back Keenan Blackshear. Even with the guys you lost, when you bring back your two guards, which is what it's all about late in the season, you have me intrigued for sure as a team that could potentially win a game or two.
Yeah, what surprises me, Nevada historically, you really think of them, and maybe this is partially from being in the same state as UNLV, but you think of them as being kind of a offensive, high-paced team, but this team is not. This team is very defensive oriented, and I think losing Will Baker is actually going to be this team's going to even be better defensively. The thing you noticed, down the stretch when they lost in the conference tourney, and when they lost to Arizona State, Lucas, if you take him out of the game, then they had trouble scoring. Somebody's going to have to set up. Is that the pick and roll with Keenan and Himes? Can McIntosh, who's not really been a great scorer, in the past, can he bring it up? Can Blackshear improve as a shooter, or can one of the young guys step up? Jazz Gardner, can he be a force in the post? They need somebody. They need one other shooter, and they need somebody, to give you consistent offense in the post. Could be Himes as a rim runner, or it could be Gardner as a post guy and a rim runner. But that's what needs to happen for this team to really achieve. All right. So now we move on to San Jose State, and they lost their heart and soul in Amari Moore. I mean, he just was Mr. Do Everything. He's now on an NBA roster. He was the player of the year in this conference. They also lose forward Sage Tolbert to the pros, and
Ibrahima
Diallo, a big-time shot-blocking center, has moved on to UCF, and he's a big guy. They don't return anybody who really floats my boat. I'd say one of the more interesting pieces, at least in terms of statistics, is power forward Robert Viola, who is the conference's leading returner in rebounding at 6.5 per game. Also, the conference's leading returning rebounder in terms of rebound percentage at 19.1, and the conference's leading returner in field goal percentage at 71.4. He's pretty much, limited. His offense is pretty much limited to the paint. And yeah. Now they do bring in one very, very promising recruit, Adrame Deong, a center from Washington State. This is a 4-star guy who didn't get much playing time at Washington State last year. Big, legit center. But with Moore, who, basically led this team in just about everything, including playmaking and scoring. Whew, I don't know.
Yeah, man, it pains me to say this because I really like Tim Miles as a coach, and I was very happy with the success they had last year. And that can happen when you have a guy like Amari Moore, and you have a player of the year on your team who can get you a bucket, who's a superb scorer, really good athlete, like can score from just about every level of the court. And to lose him, and then to lose a big fella in Diallo who can block shots, gobble up rebounds, and be a guy that can score down there for you too. Is really, really a killer. And then also Sage Tolbert, who was a Temple guy, who actually had a couple classes with, funny enough, while I was at Temple. A guy like him who could also score a little bit and can kind of fill the cracks, on the wing and do some different things for you. So to lose all that, there's really nobody here who, to me is like a huge impact who I think is going to keep them at this level. And they're certainly going to fall towards the bottom tier of this conference as opposed to staying in this spot. So really like Tim Miles. This is a really tough place to win, and he had a really, really good year last year.
Mm-hmm.
But they're gonna have quite the tumble here, in my opinion, and are going to be closer to the bottom of the conference for sure as opposed to this level. There's too much talent and production going out the door that unfortunately did not get replaced, and I don't think that the guys they have coming back are, adequate enough replacements to replicate this kind of success.
Yeah, I mean, this team is going to have they have a lot of size. They should be able to rebound, block shots, score in the post, but guard play, Miles is probably going to play at that slow pace that he played last year. And so they're going to probably steal some wins just by being a matchup problem, but they don't have anybody who can shoot, and they don't really have a proven playmaker. By the way, your former classmate, Sage Tolbert, is now playing professionally in Hungary, and he was the team's leading rebounder last year.
Good for him.
Yes.
Good for him. Came a long way from sitting next to my dumb ass in class.
All right. So the next team we're going to talk about in the Mountain West is New Mexico. New Mexico lost, I'd say, 2 key players, and both were bigs. And that is Morris Udeze, transfer from Wichita State, excellent rebounder, pretty good shot blocker, just a really good efficient paint scorer. And they also lose Josiah, I think it's Alec.
Yes.
And he is going to Nebraska, I believe. Yeah. And he also, I believe, was one of their better rebounders. I'm just looking here. Yeah, he was second behind Udeze. Udeze was 9.6 rebounds a game, and Alec was 7.3. Nobody else on the team had more than 4. Actually, nobody had. Jalen House, the little point guard, was their next best rebounder at 3.9 per game. So, that's a big chunk of production in terms of rebounding. But they still probably bring back the best backcourt in the Mountain West. And with Jamal Mashburn Jr., he's the leading returning scorer in the conference at 19.1 points per game. Also the leading returner in terms of usage percentage at 29.2. And his running mate, Jalen House, he's the leading returner in terms of steals per game at 2.7. Also the leading returner in assist or steal percentage at 4.7. Leading returner for plus minus 10.3. And the leading returner for player efficiency rating at 25.7, which is huge for a small guard. This to tell you, that just shows you how efficient he was. Now the big story with New Mexico is not only they had a nice recruiting class, but they also bring in some really valuable transfers. And we're going to start off with one of those guys who's going to pick up a lot of the rebounding, and that's Nelly Jr. Joseph, center from Iona. And then they also have Isaac Mushila from Texas A&M Corpus Christi, and he is a rebounding machine. He's not super tall. He's only like 6'6", 6'7", but man, he just grabs boards all over. They also bring in Mustafa Amziel of Dayton, and he's I believe he's from Finland. Goes about 6'9", 6'10", but he's really an offensive player. He can shoot, could score inside. So you people who are familiar with the A10 will know that he's a valuable player. And they also bring in Jamari Baker from Fresno State, former Kentucky recruit. And he's an offensive guy, not the most efficient guy. He's a little bit of a chucker, but he's definitely can, give you 15, 20 points on a given night. And then they have a recruiting class that features one top 100 guy in shooting guard True Washington, and also Jaden Toppin, a power forward, and he comes in the composite recruiting rankings at 111. He's more of a paint presence. He actually likes to compare himself to. Are you ready for this? If you're a history buff of basketball, Antoine Jameson, one of my favorite college players of all time. He likes to consider himself an Antoine Jameson-like player. And I actually did a little research to find out if he was a member of if he was related to Obi Toppin, but it seems he's not. I couldn't find anything anywhere that says he's related to Obi Toppin. So what do you make of this New Mexico team, Jake?
So last year we always knew they could score. Defensively is where they kind of had their shortcomings. And I think that the thing that gives me the most confidence that they're going to be an improved team on that end You talk about the losses at the big at the center and the power forward positions in losing Morris Udeze and Josiah Alec, but they bring in a guy in Nelly Jr. Joseph who's going to be able to protect the rim, and that's going to be huge for them. Those guys did not even average a block per game. The two of them, not really, guys that are going to block a lot of shots and are big time rim protectors. If you have to play against a smaller guard like Jalen House, you're going to need that. So. Yeah, Nelly Jr. Joseph coming in. Not only is he going to be able to block a lot of shots and still grab rebounds, but offensively, he can actually step out and hit a jumper here and there.
Yep.
He can still score down the paint. So offensive, I think really on both ends, like he's really a kind of almost like really good kept secret.
Yeah.
At the mid-major level. He was very, very, very good at Iona ever since he got there.
Yeah.
Ever since he got there, he continued to get better. So on both ends of the court, I really do think they did upgrade at center. Now, obviously, he doesn't have the girth and the power that a guy like Morris Udeze has, or even Josiah Alec was really good offensive on both ends of the court, especially offensive. Making hustle plays, getting second possessions for the team. But I just think really on both ends, rim protection, still being able to score inside. Nelly Jr. Joseph's a really, really big.
And Mushila is going to pick up those hustle rebounds.
And there you go. I will say the most intriguing guy on this team that you didn't touch on was Donovan Dent. Because you saw him, she showed some real flashes last year, his speed, ability to get to the basket, could shoot it a bit. If he can take a big sophomore leap and become a third guard, and when a Jamal Mashburn or a Jalen House comes out of the game, you can have a Donovan Dent come in there and not really skip a beat. That's going to be huge for them. So I think Donovan Dent's kind of the swing piece here for New Mexico, and I believe that defense will get better with Nelly Jr. Joseph. So they started off hot, but they were the last undefeated team, second to last undefeated team.
Yeah, they just kind of then they really fell off.
They fell off. Jalen House got hurt, but with some luck and some health, I like the transfers they brought in to replenish their losses. This is going to be a really, really good team. I'd be stunned if they couldn't make the tournament.
Yeah. Agreed. Now we go to UNLV, who's a little bit of a wild card. First of all, they lose at least two valuable players in E.J. Harkless, who was one of the top scorers, or maybe the top scorer in the Mountain West last year. I know he averaged around 19 points per game. And Keyshawn Gilbert, who was a freshman last year. By the way, Harkless graduated, and Gilbert transferred after a nice, solid freshman season to Iowa State. They also lose Elijah Parquet, who was a defensive specialist, former guy from Colorado. Victor Awaku, who we talked about going to Southern when we were talking about Southern Miss. And so who's coming back? The best player coming back is Luis Rodriguez, and SEC fans might remember him. Very athletic. It can be a stat sheet stuffer, but the problem with him is shooting. That's the one thing he lacks, and it's kind of a shame because he really does have nice size and the athleticism. So they also bring back shooting guard Rodriguez, by the way, as a wing. They also bring back shooting guard Justin Webster, who made 46% of his threes last year, and two guys that were former pretty high recruits who didn't really play much last year, and that's wing Shane Noel and center Isaiah Cottrell. Both of them didn't play much this year, but they figure to play more this year. And these are, kind of like 4-star guys, 3-star guys. And yeah, so now here's where it gets interesting. Probably their most promising addition is point guard Dayton Thomas. He's a top 50 4-star guy. And he will be needed on a team that really doesn't have a point guard. In fact, the top 4 guys UNLV lost last year were all guards. And two of them were combo guards, and one was a point guard in Jordan McCobb. So, Dayton Thomas figures to probably slot right into the starting lineup. And you also have the steady Jalen Hill, Really productive guy, can do a little bit of everything. He's a small forward, regular forward, plays bigger than his size. Probably only goes about 6'6", but he's strong. He plays with good effort. And then we have the Boone brothers. And this is what's kind of make this team. If the Boone brothers play, this team could be an NCAA team. If they don't, this team is probably middle of the pack in the conference. Now, as we stated in our previous episode, Caleb Boone just was charged with DUI, so we don't know what his status is. He is a athletic shot blocker and also can be, a really dynamic rim runner, spectacular dunk kind of guy. And then we have his brother, Keelan, are they twins? They're twins, aren't they? Yeah. Yep. But Keelan, I believe, is like an inch shorter, and his game is very different. He's more of a shooter. But he's like 6'8", 6'9", and he can make threes. But he had a horrible year last year at Pacific. And now, so he went from Oklahoma State to Pacific, and now he's trying to transfer again, and he hasn't gotten a waiver yet. So I think with the Boone boys, this team could contend for the conference title. Without the Boone boys, they're probably middle of the pack.
Yeah, I'd agree. I like the point you made on Jalen Hill. How about this? So they have EJ Harkless, they had Victor Iwakor, who of course are leaving, but that pipeline from Lon Kruger to Kevin Kruger is still strong. Getting Jalen Hill can be one of your better defenders, if not your best defender on the perimeter on a given night, which is huge for them, a guy with a lot of experience. And yeah, I agree with you. They're going to need some shot blocking. They're going to need to play better defense for sure if they want to contend. So they're losing a lot of scoring, especially in Keyshawn Gilbert. But yeah, it's kind of two different ends of the spectrum here. I think with the Boones, yes, you're absolutely right. They can really have a top 5 or maybe higher finish. Without them, though, they'll probably be right where they were last year. I'm pretty sure they got off to a good start last year and then kind of tapered off. I could see that happening again for them. But some solid guys coming back with the Boones. Real good team here without, unfortunately, another missed year for the NCAA tournament for Kevin Kruger. I'm still waiting for UNLV to kind of like get back and resurge here. They were supposed to have Chris Beard, then he pulled out. Like ever since the whole Chris Beard thing happened, he was the head coach there for like a month, and they had to hire Marvin Menzies, and then they had Otzelberger. He leaves. Like this is a good program, like it is. They just haven't quite hit that stride.
It used to be a top 25 program year in and year out under Tarkania, but those days are long gone.
Yeah, even with Lon Kruger too. But it's a shame. They're a really good brand in the sport that you want them to be good. Like
definitely
better when UNLV's good. This hasn't gotten there yet.
I agree. Though Nevada has definitely been the best team in the state for I don't know, last 5 years or so. All right, so now we move on to Colorado State, a team that was very competitive for a number of years when David Roddy was there, but now with Roddy gone last year, they took a dive and were toward the bottom of the conference. They lose 2 key players, not stars, but steady contributors in wing Isaiah Rivera, who went to Illinois, Chicago, and John Tunje, a wing who transferred to Missouri. They also lost center James Moore. Now, the good news is that they bring back Isaiah Stevens, who is just a top-notch guard, definitely going to be in the Player of the Year discussion in this conference. He's the leading returner in assists at 6.7 per game, had an assist percentage last year of 38.6. That's also the best of any player returning. And they bring back a bunch of guys that were steady contributors last year, which is good. There's continuity with this team that not every team in the conference has, but there's no real injection of any really super promising talent in my eyes. They did bring in some guys like small forward Nikki Clifford from Colorado, Javante Johnson, a wing from New Mexico, and Joel Scott, a power forward from Black Hill State. But none of these guys, I think, is going to be enough. It's going to be Isaiah Stevens and a bunch of so-so players. That's the way I see this team.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's a shame that that's the case because Isaiah Stevens is legitimately one of the best players at that position, not just in this conference, but honestly in the sport.
Yeah.
To be quite honest with you,
Yep.
They've just kind of fallen quite, some distance since that David Roddy team. So I don't think the ceiling's very high here, unfortunately, because I think you're right. It's going to be Isaiah Stevens and the rest of the cast. And I don't think he's going to be able, as good as he is, I don't think he's going to be able to carry this roster to be at the very top of the league. So unfortunately for the Rams and for Nico Medved, probably another middle of the pack finish where they can still be competitive. It's still a very hard place to play, like all the Colorado schools are. They have that
Yep.
working for them.
Yep.
They can definitely grab some upsets in this conference. But that being said, probably about the same finish for them. And God forbid something happens to Isaiah Stevens, they'll tumble even lower. But I think they would finish.
Yeah.
I think they finished right around here.
Yeah, that contributed last year to their slow start because he was hurt to begin the season.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, this guy's a good shooter, excellent passer, great floor general. I don't know if he's NBA material, but he's definitely, in the top 200 on our draft board. Yeah, so definitely one of the best players in college basketball. Next is Fresno State, and now we're really getting toward the bottom of the conference, and they lose 3 key players from last year's squad. The aforementioned Jamari Baker, who went to New Mexico, Anthony Holland transferred to Washington. He's a wing, and center Isaiah Moore, who's former St. John's guy, athletic shot blocker. He moves on. Now, they do bring back Isaiah Hill, who led the team in minutes last year, also led the team in scoring at 12.6 per game, but he wasn't very efficient. 39% from the floor, 30% from deep. They also bring back center Eduardo Andre. Now, he only played about 21 minutes per game last year, but he's the leading returner in the conference for blocks per game at 1.5, block percentage at 8.9, and defensive rating at 94.2. And they also bring in at center Enoch Boki from from Arizona State. And this guy was a top 30 recruit who basically I don't know what it was with Bobby Hurley, but he just could not get on the court. And so they probably have the most impressive center tandem in the conference. But yeah, that's about the best thing I think you could say about Fresno.
Yeah, a lot of losses here too. Not putting a ton of stock in Jamal Baker because he's on his 4th stop now, going to New Mexico.
Like
but losing Anthony Holland, moving up, big center, and Isaiah Moore, not going to hurt as much with the centers they have. But it's going to come down to guard play here. I don't know how deep this team is going to be. I guess I like the addition to Ducell coming from Wyoming in conference to give him some shooting and some scoring. But yeah, I'm not seeing the talent here for even like a sleeper year from Fresno and Hudson. I'm just not seeing it. This is probably where they're going to be again. To be honest with you, I don't see this team even really being in the middle tier of this conference.
Yeah. So now we move on to the very bottom of the conference in Air Force in Wyoming. Air Force, to top it off, they lose their best player from last year, point guard Jake Heidbreder. He moves on to Clemson. He was the leading scorer on the team. I think it was it was over 15 points per game. So this is the killer. He also shot 40% from deep. So that's a big loss for Air Force. And they bring back a lot of guys, but I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. And if you look at in terms of the recruiting class and transfers, nothing coming in. So I don't really see how things can change for Air Force.
Yeah, and this is an impossible job as well. It's just a hard place to win, a hard place to have success and keep people. Yeah, they're not going to be very good. They never really have a ton of huge front end size should they have to compete with some of these bigger teams in the conference too? And then when you lose your best player as well, yeah, they're gonna finish right. Unfortunately, in the basement once again. This is a good league. This is a tough job. Kind of not, there's a lot of things going against Air Force here, just from a program standpoint that kind of hold it back. I guess not that it's anybody's fault, just the nature of it.
Yeah, the funny thing is how competitive they are on the football field, but I think the problem they have is I'm just guessing, but I would assume there's not many 6'9" guys who or 6'10" guys that plan on being a fighter pilot.
Yeah, no, what's funny is a couple years ago, I used to bet against them because I kind of had that same logic. So when they would play against the San Diego State, who was big, and they would play against the Utah State that had Dustin Bean and the Myers Cada, I would bet against them because they just didn't have the size to go. Like they're getting doubled up on the boards. They would lose a game on the boards like 44-28 or 44-20. You know what I mean? Something like that. And they just give up so many extra possessions when they don't have that size. That it just kills them and it can be the difference. So I used to kind of use that same logic, which I guess maybe is not the greatest thing in respect to them, but it's just the reality of it.
No, I feel bad. I feel bad for them, and I don't really think they should be in this conference for basketball. It's just surprising how good they are at football.
Yeah, but it's a very, very good conference that people in the East Coast don't acknowledge enough, how good this conference is and how tough a job this is and all the factors that go into the Air Force job.
Right. All right. So the team that finished last probably shouldn't have finished last, and it ended up with their coach. Didn't their coach get fired? Yeah. We didn't talk about that coaching change, but didn't he get fired?
No, Jeff Linder's still there.
Oh my goodness. Well, he's going to get fired.
Well, he's probably the only guy that's still there.
Right. So, Wyoming had a horrible year last year. They lose their three best players. Graham Ike, who didn't play last year but was a star the year before, moves on to Gonzaga. Hunter Maldonado graduated, and Jemiah Oden, another valuable player, probably the most athletic guy on the team, he goes to DePaul. So they lost a lot of other guys too, but the only decent player that's returning is Brendan Wenzel, and they bring in some interesting recruits. And Sam Griffin is the most notable. He's a chucker. He can put points on the board. He's a guard, and he's averaged over 13 points a game for 3 straight years. 1 year at Texas Arlington and 2 at Tulsa. And last year at Tulsa, he averaged 15.2 points per game. He shot 7.6 threes per game, Jake, and only made 32% of them. But he's an excellent foul shooter at 84%. But since he's always shooting so much, he doesn't get to the line that often. So, I don't see a lot of hope for Wyoming to turn it around this year.
No, I mean, and it's shocking to look at all these losses and there's no real guys coming in. I mean, besides maybe an Iona or a St. John's that had coaching changes, it's staggering to see how many guys. This is a team that made the NCAA tournament 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Kind of mid-season, they brought in Ethan Anderson and Max Ogbonpolo from USC last year. They also brought in Jake Kyman from UCLA, and it was hey, they got 3 power conference Pac-12 transfers to transfer down. They all 3 of them just left mid-season. And then you had the Graham Ike injury. Hunter Maldonado was banged up. It was just so much that went wrong last year that now they just kind of rid themselves of. They don't have an offensive threat like Graham Ike, who, although, most of the time really just goes to that left hand. A guy like that who could put up points inside, they're not going to have. They're not going to have a guy like Maldonado that can do a bunch of different things for them and shoot and handle the ball. The shooting they lose with a guy like Dussel, the size, there's not, this is a total rebuild year
Mm-hmm.
for Jeff Linder and the Cowboys. And he's going to have to really coach the hell out of this team if they already even finished, 2 spots above last. The cupboard is just so bare compared to what they had the last 2 years that
Air Force might not have
scenario.
But Air Force might not have a lot of talent, but they know how to play the game, and they're well coached, and they might have Wyoming may have a hard time even finishing higher than Air Force, because of Air Force brings back a lot of continuity. All right, so now it's time to make the big predictions. Jake, who do you see winning this conference?
So it's going to come down to me to New Mexico and San Diego State. However, even with their losses coming off the national championship game last year, I am still going to go with San Diego State to win this conference. It's going to be a 2-horse race with them in New Mexico, but it's all going to come down to guard play. And although I say that, Jamal Mashburn and Jalen House are better, you give me the coaching of Brian Dutcher, the defense that I know San Diego State is going to play. And even with the rim protection dropping off, I still believe they'll be very good. And guys like DeMarshe Johnson and Jay Powell can pick that up for them. So I'm going to roll with San Diego State once again. Now the cat's out of the bag of how good they are and how good Brian Dutcher is, but I'm going to pick them to, even with the losses they have, big that they could get Lamont Butler and Darion Trammell back. I'm going to take the Aztecs to repeat as conference champions in the Mountain West.
Good choice. Good choice. But I'm going to go with your other choice. I'm going to go with New Mexico. I'm going to look for some new blood. I think San Diego State is probably more vulnerable in this conference than it has been in recent years. I like the additions. I love their backcourt of Mashburn and House. So I'm going to go with New Mexico. And I don't think it's a 2-team race. I think it's a 3-team race. I think Nevada is going to be there as well. All right. So how many at-large bids does this conference get?
I think it's going to be 3. Actually, it's the same 3 that you have that you just mentioned. I think Nevada can get there once again. Getting Kwame.
So you think
Himes
they're going to get three at-large bids or 3 bids total?
I think 3 bids total. They'll get 2 at-larges besides their conference winner. I believe the conference will be down a little bit with Utah State not being right there, with the Colorado State not being there. So I'm going to roll with go 2 at-larges here. It's either New Mexico and San Diego State, whoever does not win the conference of those 2, and Nevada as well, with Kwame Himes kind of filling in for Will Baker here, giving him some toughness and some girth inside, I think will be big. And it's just kind of hard for me to go with Boise here, with the losing Shaver is a really, really big loss for them. So I think Boise's right on that fringe.
Mm-hmm.
I think they'll be kind of holding their breath selection Sunday, but I think that those 3 teams, New Mexico, Nevada, San Diego State, feel very, very good about the 3 of them getting in.
Yeah, I think this conference also, I agree, they'll get 2 at-large bids, 3 total. And I think there's a chance, just like you just said, there are possibly 4. So my 2 choices would be Nevada, San Diego State to be the at-large. And I think Boise and UNLV, if the Boone Boys are there, UNLV will be right there as well. And I think if the Boone Boys play, that's good for the entire conference, because that makes the conference that much stronger. UNLV could pick up some nice non-conference wins that could build up the rest of the conference, because we know those games played in November and December actually boost your conference rankings. All right, so who do you like for Player of the Year? This is a tough one.
I'm going to go with Jamal Mashburn from New Mexico. Not his scoring, his usage, and to still be that efficient with those things going for him. Here's my thing about Jamal Mashburn. I have a soft spot for guys that still shoot the mid-range jump shot. And last year in college basketball, there wasn't. Jamal Mashburn was one of the, if not the best mid-range threat in the entire country. It can be a toss-up between him and Jalen House. But I'm going to go Jamal Mashburn, especially if this team can win this conference. I would imagine he would be their leading scorer again, which would then, pretty much be a clear choice, in my opinion, to give Jamal Mashburn the Player of the Year. I'm going to go with him.
Yeah, this was probably my toughest conference of the year player pick I've had so far. I had, 4 guys come to mind, including the 2 New Mexico guards, House and Mashburn. Also thought about our guest, Tyson Degenhart, and Isaiah Stevens, Colorado State point guard. Ultimately, I went with House. I think Mashburn will put up the scoring numbers, but I think House gives you a lot more of other things. Hopefully the voters will notice that. I think House is probably the more important player. But yeah, it's gonna be a close race. So before we move on to the West Coast Conference preview, we're going to talk to another Mountain West player, Tre Coleman of Nevada. I actually spoke to him earlier today, and we'll roll that interview now. Our second guest today is Nevada's 6'7" senior forward, Tre Coleman, a 2023 Mountain West All-Defensive selection, an Ironman, and a glue guy. Tre has never missed a game at Nevada, playing in a total of 90 contests while averaging more than 28 minutes per game. Last season, he averaged 6.3 points, 3.1 rebounds, 2.6 assists, one steal per game, while shooting 45% from the floor, 36% from deep, and 68% from the free throw line. Tre finished 5th in the Mountain West for block percentage. He led the Wolfpack with an assist turnover ratio of 3.2, which is outstanding, and finished 2nd on the team for plus minus. Tre, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Good. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. I should note that Nevada has officially taken the lead with our show, with the most players appearing on the podcast. We spoke to Keenan Blackshear last year, just before the start of the Mountain West tourney, and we spoke with Gerard Lucas in the spring, the day he announced he was returning to Nevada. And you're the 3rd. So congratulations. We will send you no, we won't send you anything, but anyway.
Sounds good.
So how was your summer? Did you do anything fun or interesting?
Pretty not really much. I went home, see my mom, see my brothers and sisters, but other than that, really just working in the gym, getting ready for this next season.
And I should know this, but where's home?
Indiana.
Mm-hmm. Oh, basketball country.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, I use the term glue guy, and I'm not sure how you feel about that. And I said that because, you don't get a lot of pub, you don't have gaudy stats, but 2 or 3 years ago, you caught my attention by consistently making winning plays. And not the type of plays that actually necessarily show up in the box score. So how do you feel about the term glue guy?
I mean, I'll accept it. Whatever you guys want to put on me, I'll accept it. But I think for me, it's a good word for me. I'll keep us together. I make sure everybody's on the same page. Defensively, of course. And I guess I'm the guy.
Okay. I was looking over the analytics, and they say you could do more. And I was curious if you knew this. Did you know last season you ranked at the 97th percentile of all players in Division I? So that's like 3,000 or more. You ranked at the 97th percentile for points and assists per possession. And you also ranked at the 92nd percentile for points per possession as a pick and roll handler. Were you aware you were that high up?
I was not aware of that. People have been telling me I'm efficient at what I do, and to tell me to shoot more. So that's really what I've been focusing on.
Right.
Yeah.
And also you were solid at the rim, 50th percentile for points per shot and 60th with runners. And as a jump shooter, you were even better, 73rd percentile. So having said all of that, what's the next step in your development? Is it shooting off the bounce, shooting coming off screens, improving your efficiency at the rim, or something else?
Just really putting it up more, because like you said, I am an efficient scorer, but I don't feel like I don't put it up enough. but just really my focus is on just getting more volume of shots, per game, or just, in general terms, just getting more shots up.
Okay. And is there anything you've particularly focused on in the off season in terms of your workouts or any particular skill?
Really ball handling, because I feel like when I'm good at my ball handling, everything else improves. My shooting improves, my passing improves. So really just ball handling and being able to come off those screens and handle pressure.
All right. Yeah, good answer. 99% of the guys I ask that question to say shooting. So it's nice to get a different answer.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to give you a number and ask you if you know what this number is. 2,545. You know what that number is?
2,500. I don't.
It is the number of total minutes you've played over the past 3 seasons, and that's a high number for a college player. And I don't think anyone keeps track of this type of thing, but I would say it's probably got to be up there among all D1 players. So what's your secret about not staying healthy, playing a high number of minutes, and not missing a game?
Knock on wood, but I've never really been hurt. I've always been able to just keep going. I've never missed a game in my life. And I've probably missed, since being here, I probably missed a handful of practices from something being sore or something. But I don't know. There's no sauce to it. Just keep going.
Okay. All right. Well, great. I'm and knock on wood. I don't have any wood around here, but I'll do it after the show. So, this year, let's talk about the team a little bit. And last year marked the first time you personally went to the NCAA tournament. And it was also the first time Coach Steve Alford took the Wolfpack to the big dance. Right. However, something seemed to be a bit off at the end of last season. You guys dropped your last 4 games. Has that year-end slump been discussed, among the coaches and players?
Yeah, it for sure has. It was discussed as it was going on, and it was discussed after. But really, our main focus was like not having much experience in what we were doing, and not being mature with what we were doing. We had a great season. We never lost at home. Then we dropped 4 games in a row. So I don't know. I think it's just maturity.
Okay, all right, that's a good answer. So this year, most of your key players are returning, including Keenan, Jared, yourself. You did lose Deron Williams to Texas Tech. He was forward, and you lost center Will Baker to LSU. But, center KJ Himes and guard Hunter McIntosh, they didn't see a lot of time last year because their seasons were shortened by injury, so they'll be back. Plus, you have some impressive newcomers coming in. You have power forward Tylen Pope coming in from Tulane. You have freshman center Jazz Gardner, and you have point guard Tyler Rollison. Both of those guys were highly rated recruits. So how would you compare this team to last year's team?
The way I would compare it is really just, I feel like we have more experience. I feel like the guys coming back, because we went through that last season, and we went through that slump in the ending part of it. I feel like we have a lot of knowledge on like what we need to do, and like how hard it is to win, and how hard it is to win in the Mountain West. So I feel like that's just our main goal is teaching the younger guys that's coming in, and teaching the newcomers who haven't been a part of like this conference that how hard it is to win, and what we really have to do.
Right. Would you say, with the young guys, I mean, I think one thing that stands out to me is KJ probably brings rim protection that he displayed early in the season before he got hurt. And I think you guys were already an excellent defensive team, but now you got a rim protector on top of it. But I don't know. I got to be honest. I don't know a lot about, Jazz and Tyler, the two guys coming in. Can you go over like what they're a little bit, what they're like?
Yeah. Just like all freshmen, they still got a lot of learning to do. But I feel like Tyler, the guard, he can bring us a lot of good ball handling. He can score the ball, pick and roll, and he can pass it really well. And Jazz, he like I said, he's a freshman as well. So like once they get acclimated and they learn the plays and like they learn what type of system we have, they'll be great players for us and they'll provide us great minutes.
Okay. Last season, you guys ranked in the middle of the pack for 3-point shooting in the Mountain West. You guys, as a team, 35%. So, in my opinion, I watched a lot of your games last year. The team seemed to struggle the most when Jared wasn't hot. And so maybe I'm wrong about that. So you can comment on that. But who do you think could be another reliable option from deep this season? And of the new guys, including KJ and Hunter, who do you think could be a real consistent scoring option to kind of replace the scoring that Darion Williams and Will Baker, won't be there?
I'm gonna say myself. I like I was saying earlier, my biggest focus this offseason was taking more shots and making more shots. So I'm gonna go with myself.
All right, good. I like that answer. We've already touched on it in a little already, but I'll ask this in a different way. On the show, we previewed the Mountain West this week, and we talked about we projected Nevada to be one of the 3 teams we think will make the NCAA tournament out of the Mountain West. What specifically for you gives you confidence that you can exceed what the team accomplished last year?
Really just knowing what to expect, down the season, like when we get to that final stretch, because it's a lot different when you first start in the season to like when you get to that final stretch, everybody's body's banged up, you really just got to rely on like your principles and you got to stay solid. So I just think us being prepared more this season is gonna take us further. Okay.
All right. That's a reoccurring theme for you. And it makes sense. It makes sense. I mean, everything was going great till the very end. So lesson learned, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So for all of his accomplishments, and if you ever go to your coach's, Steve Alford's Wikipedia page, my goodness, I mean, he's done it all. Olympic gold medal, national champion, All-American, all that good stuff. But, for all of his accomplishments, he doesn't get a lot of national recognition. Maybe on the West Coast, you guys hear about him a lot, but we don't on the East Coast. You don't hear much about Steve Alford. So how would you describe him as a person, and how has he personally, how has he helped you develop as a player and a person?
So like first off, like me being from Indiana, like I've always heard about Steve Alford,
right.
So, because he's from there, so I've always heard about him. Even growing up, like he was one of the greatest to ever come out of Indiana. So me personally, I always knew about him. But the things he's done to help me is just really just guide me in the right way. Just even off the court, on and off the court, just guide me in the right way and make sure I'm a solid man and just growing me each year.
And how would you describe his personality? Like,
he's a real funny guy. You know what I'm saying? When we get between the lines, he gets serious, of course, just like all coaches. But off the court, he's a real funny guy. He always jokes around with us, and he always jokes around with me. He'll always say like I'm from Louisville or something because that's the state over. He'll always joke on that. But that's pretty much it. He's a prankster,
Okay, cool. And I hear, are you and Keenan roommates?
Yeah, we are. We live together.
And I heard you guys are really close. How is Keenan? How's his off season gone? And how's he feeling? And just what kind of Keenan do you think we're going to see this year?
I think just an improved one. You know what I'm saying? I think what he's been doing this offseason has really helped him, even off the court. The stuff he's had to handle and things like that. He's been in the gym consistently, of course, but just really his mindset, I feel like, has grown. I think he's grown through his mental. So I feel like you will see a more mature Keenan.
And he went through a big adjustment last year, changing positions. Being more on the ball. So he's bound to benefit from a year of doing that.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So lastly, I hear you love swimming and you enjoy going to Lake Tahoe. Did you ever compete as a swimmer in high school?
I didn't because the basketball season and the swim season mixed up, but I would. Yeah.
So how often do you swim?
Not as often as I would like because of basketball and stuff. But
Right.
I don't know. I mean, in the summer I would swim a lot on the weekends and stuff when we didn't have workouts. But I haven't went in a while.
Right. I
Been
was just
taking care
curious.
of
I was just curious because, I think swimming is, and as you can tell, I'm not a swimmer because I just think it's a great way to stay in shape.
Yeah.
There's no risk of getting injured, and it really can develop your muscles and your strength and your endurance. And I wondered if that was your secret to staying healthy.
I see. I just really enjoy doing it.
Okay, cool. And as far as Tahoe goes, have you ever? I know you probably don't get much of a chance, at least lately, but have you ever had the opportunity to try winter sports at Tahoe?
I've skied in Tahoe before.
Okay.
It was pretty hard. It was my first time skiing was when I came to college, but it was pretty hard the first time.
Yes.
But you get used to it eventually. But yeah, that's the only thing I've done up there is ski.
Yeah. I also have skied in Tahoe. I grew up in the mountains, so I kind of grew up with skis on my feet. So,
okay, yeah.
All right. Well, Tre, I really appreciate you being on the show, and I want to thank you. And please tell Keenan and Jared I said hi, and I wish you guys the best this season. And let's do it again down the road.
Of course. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. And please say thank you to Trevor too.
Yep, got you.
All right. We'll talk to you soon then.
Yep.
All righty. So now we move on to the West Coast Conference. And there is some realignment news here because BYU has left the conference for the Big 12 and they have not been replaced. So last year, the conference champion was, actually for the regular season title, Gonzaga St. Mary's tied. They also split their regular season matchups with each home team winning. The two teams met in the conference championship and the Zags won that game pretty convincingly, 77-51. Both Gonzaga and St. Mary's made the big dance. The Gales would have advanced to the second round with a win over VCU before falling to the eventual champion UConn. Gonzaga would make it all the way to the Elite Eight with wins over Grand Canyon, TCU, and UCLA before also falling to UConn. Santa Clara was the only West Coast Conference team to make the NIT, and they lost in the first round in a nail-biter to Sam Houston. So best offensive team in the conference was by far Gonzaga. They averaged 86.1 points per game, which also was the top number in the nation. The Zags also led the conference in offensive efficiency at 118.6, which was second in the country. The top defensive team was St. Mary's, and they were the only West Coast Conference team to allow less than 70 points per game. They only allowed 60.1, which was the fifth best in the country. The Gales also topped the conference in defensive efficiency, 92.7, which was 19th in Division I. Pepperdine led the conference in pace at 74.5, which was fifth in the nation, followed by Gonzaga at 72.4. Per usual, St. Mary's played with its methodical style and was the slowest paced team in the conference, 64.2, which is the 19th slowest in the country. Other interesting stats: 4 WCC teams, Pacific, Gonzaga, Portland, and St. Clara, made better than 37% from deep, with Pacific leading the pack at 39% as a team, fourth in D1. What's interesting here is sometimes we look at a conference and nobody shoots better than 37%. This conference had 4 of them. St. Mary's led the conference in rebounding percentage at 55.3, which was 11th in D1. BYU and Gonzaga were also in the top 20 in the country for rebounding margin. Portland led the WCC in assist percentage at 58.4. Gonzaga led the conference in turnover percentage, just 12.9, which was the 18th best in the country, while BYU finished last in the conference for turnover percentage. St. Mary's led the conference in steal percentage at 10.6, and BYU led the conference in block percentage at 11.5. I believe there are no coaching changes in this conference. Is that true, Jake?
Yep.
All right, so we'll move right on. We'll talk about the teams in order that they finished last year. Of course, we're very familiar with Gonzaga, and they lost a bunch of guys. Drew Timme has moved on to the NBA. Julian Strother, the same. Rasheer Bolton is playing in Belgium. Malachi Smith is on an Exhibit 10 in the NBA. Hunter Salas transferred to Wake Forest. Efton Reed transferred to Wake Forest. Dominic Harris transferred in conference to Loyola Marymount. So that's 7 players. 5 of them played significant minutes on a regular basis. Who returns? Anton Watson, excuse me. He's a forward. He's the leading returner in the conference for steals at 1.8 per game. He's also the leading returner for offensive rating at 130.1. Leading returner for player efficiency rating at 22.7. Leading returner also for win shares and plus minus. Then we have returning also the controversial Noah Hickman, who Drew actually despises. And we also have Ben Gregg, a highly touted forward who's never really gotten regular playing time, about 6'9", 6'10" guy, can stretch the floor. Then what gets interesting is the newcomers. We have point guard Ryan Nebhard coming in from Creighton, Graham Ike coming in from Wyoming, Steele Venters, the player of the year in the Big Sky, a wing coming in from Eastern Michigan. Then we have the freshmen. We have Dusty Stromer, a sharpshooter. He's a top 50 guy in the recruiting rankings. And they also tapped in to the European freshman market, and they bring in Luka Krdnovic from Croatia. He's got some pro experience. He put up really, really good numbers for an 18-year-old last year in the Croatian league. And then we have,
I think it's June Sekyo.
I'm sorry, June Sekyo from the NBA Global Academy. And he too has had some impressive performances. Worth noting that Drew, I was talking to him about this guy, and Drew is very high on him. So what do you make of this Gonzaga team?
See, they certainly had to get better at the guard position. You look at why they got dominated by UConn, because UConn had way better guards than them. They had to bring in someone to not have Nolan Hickman play bulk of the minutes. And they brought in one of the best point guards in the entire country in Ryan Nemhard, which is why they're going to continue to be very good. You can't replace Drew Timme, but getting Graham Ike is a very, very solid guy to step in. They're also bringing back, of course, like you said, Anton Watson. I don't know how deep this team is going to be, but they're still going to be very good and be the favorite once again to win this conference. I don't think there's a team that goes very far in the tournament, though. I think at best this is like a Sweet 16 team, maybe. Like this isn't a Final Four good team by any means.
No.
But they're still going to be competitive. They're still very solid. They brought in a lot of good transfers from whether it be smaller conferences or a Big East type like Nemhard. Still going to be very good, but there's a lot to replace here, and there's not a whole lot coming back. And like I said, when it came down to it, Nolan Hickman wasn't getting it done. He had a good game against Santa Clara in conference, but like that doesn't move the needle against anybody when you have to go beat UConn and go to the Final Four. So I think they upgraded significantly at the guard position. Hunter Salas never blossomed. Efton Reed couldn't really get any time behind Timme and Watson. So there was some flame outside, I guess you'd call it. Some guys that didn't live up to the billing on this team that I think kind of cut them from being a Final Four team.
Yep.
Last year. I don't think they're that once again, but what I will say is they're still solid. They're still a tournament team that's capable of getting the second weekend. And
Sweet 16 team.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking their ceiling is. But regardless, that's a team that's good enough to potentially dominate this conference, and once again do the double, win the regular season, and win the conference tournament in Vegas.
Yep. I think this team definitely lacks star power. Lacks a go-to scorer. Maybe that's probably going to be Ike. because Watson's really kind of more of a do-everything guy as opposed to like a scoring guy. And Nebhart's more of a playmaker, so he needs people around him to score. So the outside shooting, Dusty Stromer, might play a really, really big role. Or the freshman, Kranovic, from Croatia. If you don't mind, I was just going to go over his numbers just briefly, because I was so impressed with his numbers. And I have to admit, I haven't seen him play, and he wasn't on my radar until they recruited him. And then I looked at his numbers. I'm like, holy shit, where have people been on this guy? He is 19 years old, won't be 20 until April. He played 30 minutes per game in the Croatian league. He averaged 17.6 points per game, shooting 53% from the floor, 35% from deep, and 72% from the free throw line. He chipped in 4.4 rebounds, 2.6 assists, and 1 steal per game. He is a 6'5" shooting guard wing. Definitely a player that but not many people have heard of, but actually could have a big impact. So now we'll move on to St. Mary's. Not many drastic changes going on with St. Mary's. They lost their super defensive guard in Logan Johnson, defensive player of the year in the conference. He graduated. They lose Kyle Bowen, who's a valuable rebounder. And they also, those were their 2 big main losses. So they bring back a bunch of talent and a couple of guys that haven't really gotten to shine because of the lack of minutes. But the main guys are bringing back Aiden Mahaney, I guess he wasn't freshman of the year. I thought he was, but I don't have it down here. But he is the conference's leading returner in usage percentage at 25.5. They bring back sharpshooter Alex Dukas. He is the leading returner for 3-pointers made and made over 41% of his threes last year. They bring back center Mitchell Saxon, 7.6 rebounds per game, 1.2 blocks per game, and a defensive rating of 93.6. They are also all the top. That's the best. He's the best returner in all those 3 categories. They bring in Augustus Marshallonis, who will finally get some regular playing time. He's got NBA blood in his body, from his dad. And I was super high on Marshallonis when he first came over. Just hasn't gotten the chance to really display it yet. They still have Joshua Jefferson and Harry Wessels, 2 guys that really haven't got a chance to shine, but have upside. And they bring in point guard Jordan Ross, was a top 130 guy, 3-4-star guy, to add to the mix. So what do you make of St. Mary's?
So obviously, you hit the head, you hit the nail on the head when you gave your intro to this conference, how slow and methodical they play on offense and how good of a head coach Randy Bennett is. He's one of the best in the entire country. Doesn't get the love that he deserves. X and O wise, he's up there with just about anybody. And I really like this team. They will fight Gonzaga again to potentially win this conference, and it will probably be the 2 of them. I mean, I'm looking at the rest. Maybe Loyola Marymount sticks out. Maybe San Francisco can make a run. But again, I think we're set for these 2 to be on a collision course, not only to try and win the conference, but probably in Vegas to face each other again in the West Coast Championship game in the tournament. Here's the thing about St. Mary's, and you touched on it when you started with them. Losing a guy like Logan Johnson, who you can stick on an island against the other team's best player, is really going to hurt them. Is really, really going to hurt them. And that's what's keeping me from wanting to put St. Mary's ahead of them being Gonzaga. They're going to compete once again, but I'm a little hesitant when you lose a guy who is that prolific on defense and could make life hell for the other team's best player.
Yep.
Like that can be the difference between St. Mary's making a real deep run in the tournament when you don't have a true defensive stopper like that, who's one of the best in the nation last year. So they will be very good once again. they'll challenge at the top here. But that, defensively, he did so much for them. He did. And that's what's worrying me about St. Mary's a little bit, losing a guy like him, not only the defense, but some length, some athleticism, some pop that they're going to miss as well. So Logan Johnson to this team is actually a huge, huge loss, even with the guys they have bringing back. And there's still a lot to like. They're going to be able to score. Mitchell Saxon was very good last year, kind of on both ends, especially defensive, which can be their saving grace. Even when you don't have a Logan Johnson like that, when you can defend the rim that well, that kind of balances things out a little bit. But without Logan Johnson, on that defensive end, I think the ceiling lowers just a little bit, but they will still be very good and could be in that top 25 or 40.
Right. Like Gonzaga, I'm a little worried about this team's depth, not so much in the conference, but come tournament time. Yeah. All right. Santa Clara, who went to the NIT and lost to the first round, they lose some really significant pieces. Starting with Brandon Podziemski, was the top 20 pick in the NBA draft. He was the player of the year in this conference. He did everything for this team. Huge loss. And Keyshawn Justice, a wing. He was a stat sheet stuffer, a great passer, good shooter. He moves on. Also, Carlos Stewart, who averaged double figures last year. He was a shooting guard. He moves on to LSU. So these are huge losses for Santa Clara. They don't really bring back a lot of guys who were super productive last year. One guy who's worth mentioning was didn't play last year, but was was touted coming out of Europe last year. So he'll be a redshirt freshman this year. This is Jacob Ensmeyer, a forward from Germany. He has experience playing in the German lower leagues. And so he's a player to keep an eye on. And also they bring in some interesting transfers, starting with Adama Ball, another European prospect who was really, really highly regarded, didn't get the playing time at Arizona, but there were times when Ball played at Arizona where you could see he popped. So I think Ball could be an all-conference player for this team this year. They also bring in Francisco Cafaro from Virginia, big center from Argentina, really good rebounder, good post scorer, not much of a shot blocker considering his size. They also bring in a couple other guys, but the one guy I'm going to mention is Christian Hammond, a freshman, point guard freshman. He might see a lot of time on a team that's hurting for playmakers with their top two playmakers gone in Podziemski and Justice. So that's Christian Hammond. He's a 3-star guy coming in. So what do you think of Santa Clara?
Yeah, they're certainly going to fall off. When you lose a first-round pick like that, and then you lose a monstrous center like Jaden Bediako to Seton Hall, there's a lot coming out the door here. And unfortunately, I think this team's really going to take a step back. I like some of the transfers they brought in. I think Cafaro is interesting as well as Adama Ball. But these losses are a lot to overcome, to be replacing with guys that, although have been in college, haven't really produced anything to know what you're going to get, at least right now. Even transferring down to the West Coast Conference, these aren't exactly proven commodities you're trying to replace a first-round pick with and a guy that's going to play major minutes and start in the Big East. So big step back for Santa Clara. I don't think they'll be third next year, and that's because the team that we're going to talk about next,
right,
I believe will be the third best team in this conference.
Right. I just want to make a note about Stewart, Justice, and Podziemski. They all played over 31 minutes per game last year. They all averaged over 13 points per game, and they all shot better than 37% from deep, and they all shot better than 77% from the free throw line. That's a lot of production. And they all averaged over 2 assists per game. And of course, they were the top 3 assist producers on the team, along with being the top 3 scorers. That's a ton of production. All right. So The next team we're going to talk about is Loyola Marymount, and they also lose their heart and soul in Cam Shelton, going on to the pros. And big loss, all conference type of player. And what they bring back is Kelly LePepe, the small forward, and he's the leading returner in the conference for free throws made. He shot 75% for the free throw line. They also bring back power forward Michael Graham. He's the leading returner for field goal percentage at 71.9, leading returner for rebounding percentage at 20.6, and a leading returner at block percentage at 5.2. So, this is a guy who didn't play a ton of minutes last year, but he should be in line for more minutes this year. Coming in through the portal are 4 interesting guards, most of which can play well. Some of them are combo guards or point guards. None of them are on the big guard, size wise. But we have Dominic Harris, who never really got the playing time at Gonzaga. We have Justice Hill, who actually played with Ja Morant. And when he was at Murray State, he really looked good. But when he went to LSU last year, it was a disaster. So Justice Hill is looking to bounce back because I thought when he played with Ja Morant, he was the second best player on that team. And then they also bring coming in, we have 2 guys from smaller schools that were very highly productive and played a lot of minutes. So it's going to be hard for them. They're going to have 4 guards to choose from. And that's Will Johnston, a combo guard from Texas, Rio Grande Valley, and Justin Wright, a shooting guard from North Carolina Central.
I like the additions this team brought in, and it really stinks to lose a guy like Cam Shelton, who is the heart and soul, like you said. Big reason why they won up at Gonzaga and were able to pull off a win like that. But they needed some shooting, and you talk about losing Justin Ahrens as well. They needed some shooting. They're going to get a guy, Dominic Harris, who can do that, and they're certainly going to get a guy in Will Johnston who can do that as well. He was actually down to Loyola Marymount and Temple pretty much as his last 2. He would have fit Adam Fisher's system right away because he's a dead-eye 3-point shooter, and that's what he's going to be, asked to replace here. And I agree with you. I really like the addition to Juice Hill here. It did not really work at LSU. I know Matt McMahon brought a couple of his, he brought, I think, 3 or 4 of his Murray State guys there, and they started out well. And then they got into conference play and did not do very well at all.
Well, except for the big guy.
KJ Williams did well.
Yeah,
I actually thought Trey Hannibal was his strength and athleticism to hold his own.
Right, but he originally played at South Carolina, I believe. So he was used to SEC play, didn't he? Didn't he start South Carolina?
Believe so.
Yeah,
I would have to fact check, but yeah, little guy like Juice Hill, I think was a guy like him who will defend, be a primary ball handler for you, and have that speed to get all the way to the rim. I think he'll actually be really, really good here for Stan Johnson and Loyola Marymount. So with the additions this team brought in, they're going to be able to spread you out and shoot. I think Juice Hill is actually destined for a pretty big year in the West Coast Conference. So I like what they did here, and I think with the losses of Santa Clara and the additions here from Loyola Marymount, they've actually propelled themselves, in my opinion, to be the 3rd best team in this conference.
Yeah, because I'm not even going to try to pronounce their names, but they bring back 4 guys, including the 2 that I mentioned, in Graham and Lou Pepe, but they also bring back a center and a forward. So they got the size coming back, and then you add these 4 guards that really should be. I think the toughest problem is going to, who starts, who, but they're probably going to go three guard lineup. And I think they're going to be a solid team again. All right. So the next team on the list is San Francisco, who also had a decent year last year, and they lose their very dynamic backcourt of Khalil Shabazz and Tyrell Roberts. Both were super huge contributors for this team. And coming back is Marcus Williams, a combo guard, who's never quite matched his freshman year at Wyoming. They also bring back forward Isaiah Hawthorne, power forward, I think it's DeWito Newberry, and forward Josh Cohen, and center Saja Gigi Perea. But that's not where the excitement is. The excitement for this team is what's coming in from the transfer portal, starting with Mongolian Mike Shavajance from the wing from Dayton. He's about 6'8" or so. Can play point guard, can play shooting guard. Had a disappointing freshman year, kind of looked out of his depth. Hopefully with a year of seasoning, maybe new surroundings, he'll play better. They also bring in Stefan Todorovic, who was a highly regarded European player, was transferring in from SMU. He's a small forward. They bring in Malik Thomas from USC, a former 3/4-star guy. And they also bring in another NBA Global Academy freshman, and Junji Wang, and Jonathan Magobov, a power forward from Missouri State, and Roby Beasley, a shooting guard from Cal Davis. So, this team is bringing in a lot of new talent, and they have a fair amount of productivity still left on the roster, though they did lose their two best players.
Yeah, losing Khalil Shabazz is going to be tough to replace. We know that Mike Sheriff-Johnson, you've seen the flashes of the essentially elite playmaking that he possesses.
Yeah.
That scoring, though, is what he's not really going to be able to provide. I think he'll be able to give you some scoring, but as far as on the level of Khalil Shabazz, that's not something you simply replace. I mean, with him and Jamari Bouye in the same backcourt, I mean, how fun was that to watch? How electric were the two of them scoring the ball?
Right.
That they're not really going to have this year. But they're going to fight with Loyola Marymount to be 3 and 4, in my opinion. I'm going to give the nod to Loyola Marymount, but it's going to be close. I think they're very close, in my opinion. And I think Mike Sheriff-Johnson, you're going to look at as a newcomer of the year in this conference, as a potential first-team all-conference player now that he can have the ball in his hands a lot more. And not, at Dayton, as a young guy, had to play behind a bunch of sophomores and some juniors that had all played together for a while. Now he's going to be handed the keys a little bit more, have the ball in his hands a little bit. His processing, his playmaking is going to be huge. That will be able to make up for the lack of scoring a little bit if he can make the guys around him better, which is going to be big for San Francisco. So he is obviously the headliner here. And even with the guys they lose, they're still going to be competitive. I'm going to pick them 4th right now, in very, very neck and neck with Loyola Marymount. But Mike Sheriff-Johnson, I think, is actually going to tear up the conference a little bit, Rich. I think Mongolian Mike's in for a really, really good year last year. And now that he can play a little bit more freely, he's going to have the ball in his hands a lot more, just going to straight up just play more and be asked to do more. I think you're going to see him actually blossom quite a bit here.
Right. Yep, I agree. I'm excited to see how this team gels, and I was super high on Mongolian Mike last year, but he just didn't seem. What really plagued him was decision making. Had a lot of turnovers. Seemed to committed a lot of silly fouls. And didn't even have the best shot selection. So. Hopefully with a year of maturity, he can overcome that. So Pacific, now we're getting toward the bottom of the conference. They lose the aforementioned Keelan Boone to UNLV. They lose shooting guard Luke Avdalovich, who led the team in minutes played. Boone, by the way, led the team in scoring. And then they also lose their second leading scorer, combo guard Jordan Ivy Curry, who comes back. The two best players coming back, Tyler Beard, former Georgetown player, a pretty high recruit. He didn't have the best of seasons last year, but I think he's about to blossom. I look for him to have a good year. And his backcourt mate, Mo Odom, a point guard, is the leading returner in the conference for assist percentage at 42.2 and the leading returner assists per game at 3.5. So that's a nice backcourt they have. other than that, I'm not too excited about this team. Not a lot coming in from the portal. What do you think, Jake?
Yeah, I agree with you. With Keelan Boone on the way out, and then Jordan Ivy Curry going back to UTSA for a second stint. He just took a vacation, which I'm sure was very, very nice to get away for a little bit on the West Coast and be on the beach. Yeah, with the losses, not much coming in. With Gonzaga reloaded, St. Mary's still very good, and San Francisco and Loyola Marymount that continue to set the distance between them and Pacific. Yeah, not too much to be excited about the Tigers here. And this conference, you get to this tier, and these guys don't really have a chance to compete much with the likes of Gonzaga and St. Mary's. So yeah, not a whole lot to be too excited about. I'm right with you about Pacific. With their losses, they can even finish lower than what they're at now. I just think the teams below them are still losing a lot. That it's like these next four we're going to talk about are kind of going to be comparable with how much they're all losing.
Yeah. I actually think Tyler Beard is going to be an all-conference player this year. Maybe not first team all-conference. Last year he only played 22 minutes a game, but 48% from the field, 43 from deep, 75 from the line. 2.6 assists per game on limited play, 22 minutes per game. I think he's going to be an all-conference type performer. But yeah, that's probably the brightest spot. All right, so now we talk about Portland, and man, this team could shoot, and they've lost a ton, including Moses Wood, probably their best, shooter. Small forward moves on to Washington. Mike Meadows was a really effective point guard for this team. He moves on to St. Louis. And they're their two biggest losses. What does come back is Tyler Robertson, who was the leading scorer on this team. He's a combo guard, wasn't very efficient. One of the few guys on this team that actually really didn't shoot well from deep, but he was also their leading scorer. And he's also the leading returning scorer in the conference at 15.6 per game. Not too excited about what they're bringing in for the portal. I just think, Portland, they got a good start at the PK80 thing or whatever. They beat North Carolina, I believe. Was it North Carolina they beat?
They actually beat Villanova.
Oh, okay.
Portland did. They beat Villanova there.
Right. And so, you looked like they were going to have a good season, but they didn't. So this team had some good shooters, but that was about it.
Yeah, they're losing, all of that pretty much with Mike Meadows being a late guy. I believe he was committed to Cal and then swapped and then went to St. Louis late. Then he was committed somewhere else and then rerouted to go play for the Billikens. But yeah, they're losing a lot of shooting here. But they are bringing back Tyler Robinson, who was, their leading scorer and guy you could really depend on. So there's that. But it's like, okay, how much is he going to be able to shoulder and carry them with all the guys that they're leaving? Still really believe in Shante Leggins as a coach, taking over a really tough job at Portland, is really excelling here. But there's a lot to replace at a program like Portland. So given like how much stock I have in Shante Leggins and how good of a coach I think he is, I think they could actually bump Pacific here and finish a little bit higher. And so kind of be in that middle tier. But if you're still in the middle tier in the West Coast Conference, there's still quite a gap, between you and the likes of St. Mary's or Gonzaga and those other teams. So they're losing a lot. They're not going to be nearly as good as they were last year, but they could probably still finish maybe fifth, maybe in this conference. That's how much I think of Shante Leggins.
Okay. So San Diego, another one that's losing probably their three best players. Eric Williams, who you may know from his time at Oregon, kind of a small forward. He's graduated. Marcellus Erlington, a wing, has graduated. And Jace Townsend, who was his team's leading scorer last year at 15 points per game. He transferred? Yeah, no, he graduated as well. So they lost their three best players to graduation. But Erlington led the team at 17.3 points per game. So I was wrong. Not Townsend. Townsend was second at 15 points per game, and Williams at 14.6. Top, all gone. Top three scores. Now, they do bring back Jaden Dallaire, who you might remember from his days at Stanford. He had, I think he's had some injury problems, and he hasn't quite progressed, or, you figured he would come to San Diego and he'd kind of be dominant in this conference. Hasn't happened yet, but I don't think he was been very healthy. So we'll see what Dallaire can do this year. He's, I'd say he's probably more of a power forward than he is a small forward. And they also bring in some interesting guys from actually freshmen. And Dragos Lungu, who's from the NBA Global Academy. He's a combo guard, widely regarded from international circles. And Kevin Patton Jr., a small forward who was a three-star, four-star guy at top 160 player. So, and also a wing, PJ Hayes, who was kind of a star at the D2 level, yet to be seen whether he can be anything at this level. So, any hope for San Diego?
Ooh. Yeah, going to be tough here for the Toreros with Steve Lavin. Obviously still fairly new to Division I. And they're losing all their some guys with some power conference experience in Eric Williams and Marcellus Earlington, like you're talking about. Losing a guy like Jace Townsend who led him in scoring. Losing a lot of experience, too. So they're going to hit a reset here. And like I said, being new to Division I, you sometimes can come in and grab some transfers and you come in with some experience. Just really wasn't the case with them too much. So they're probably headed for a finish like this again. They're just, being new to the West Coast Conference, they're just not on that level to consistently compete and even be middle of the pack quite yet. But yeah, I think Steve Lavin's a good coach, and I'm sure this is going to be an easy place to recruit when you look at how beautiful their campus is. If you've ever seen pictures in the area it's in. But this upcoming year, no. They're going to finish right around here. They're losing a lot. There's some question marks with their returners as well. And with the new guys coming in, they have to replace fourth and fifth year guys. So they're going to hit the reset button here. Seventh, maybe even a last place finish could be in the cards potentially for the Toreros. They look to gear up again, probably for next year and the next 2 years, as opposed to this year with all the losses they have.
But the good news for Lavin is, he is bringing in two pretty highly regarded freshmen, so that's a nice starting point. All righty, so now we're going to move on to the last place team in the conference, and that was Pepperdine. Of course, we noted that they played at a very fast pace last year, and they lose Maxwell Lewis, their forward, all-conference forward to the NBA, now playing for the Lakers. And they also lose Mike Mitchell to Minnesota. And Mitchell was a very good shooter and a very good playmaker. So there's two really big losses there. However, the cupboard's not bare. They bring back Javon Porter. Porter, has nice size. He's a big who can score from inside and outside. He averaged just 12.1 points per game. And 7.2 rebounds per game, also nearly a steal and a block per game on very nice shooting splits, 49 from the field, 35 from deep, 71 from the line. So there's an all-conference type right there. And then there's Houston Millette, who's a very steady combo guard. They also bring back Malik Moore, who's the best returning shooter on this team, shot 43% from deep. He's a wing. And they bring in Ethan Anderson, used to play for USC, used to play for Wyoming, a steady point guard, to run the show. So I actually think Pepperdine has a good chance to maybe leapfrog San Diego, Portland, Pacific, and get up to the middle of this conference.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think San Diego's that team that probably slides into the basement here. And although they lose an NBA player, Maxwell Lewis, which is also, you look at this team and it's like, hey, last couple of years they put the Edwards guys in the NBA, and then they also put Maxwell Lewis. It's out of nowhere.
Well, why can't they win any games?
It's become a bit of an NBA pipeline, dare I say, conference, but they still can't win. So with that being said,
Santa Clara as well. Santa Clara produced Podzimski and Jalen Williams. So that's
yeah,
even
how
bigger.
weird is that those two
Yeah.
teams can't make the tour and they can't even get close, but they're putting these first rounders and guys that, even in the second round that can get picked.
Right.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the Toreros are the team that probably slides into this last place spot here. And even with losing an NBA player like Maxwell Lewis, the guys they have coming back can move them up a couple spots. Not that it's enough to make the tournament or anything, but at least from last place, that there's certainly room for improvement with the losses of the teams above them. So, yeah, they certainly can move 2 or 3 spots up. Maybe that's just not in this conference. It's not enough to do much damage.
Right. I think Porter for sure is going to be an all-conference player this year, and Millette might be too. So even Malik Moore, on larger volume, good shooter. So yeah, this team certainly should be good on the offensive end. Defense is another story. All right, so Jake, who do we got winning the conference? It looks like, the way we've been talking, it comes down to 2 teams.
Yeah, and it's kind of that's been the story of this conference the last couple of years. This is one of the least scary Gonzaga teams in quite some time, at least from what I can remember.
I agree.
It's tough because I'll say it again. That loss of Logan Johnson is really, really big. Really, really big when you can just play straight up man and say, hey, you guard the other team's best player, make life hell for him. That's really, really tough. But I think I'm actually going to roll with St. Mary's. They're going to have a lot of trouble not being able to just say, Gonzaga will be saying, hey, we have Graham Mika and he's very good when he's healthy. But whoever it was, maybe besides Hunter Dickinson, whoever Gonzaga brought in was going to be a pretty significant downgrade just because of how good Drew Timme was.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll still be the favorite probably in this conference. And bringing in Ryan Nembhard is huge because he is terrific. His pace, his leadership, to be a good floor general in the Big East, let alone this conference, he'll dominate it. But I actually think Randy Bennett's going to have something here with Randy Bennett bringing back a bunch and not even having to really use the transfer portal. I think the Gales could actually knock off Gonzaga here, Rich.
I don't know if you noticed, but after we got done talking about Gonzaga and St. Mary's, I went down and changed my pick. I just started looking at the 2 lineups. I started looking at the rosters, and I said, this St. Mary's team has so much more continuity than Gonzaga. And Gonzaga doesn't really have, beside Nembhard, they don't really have like a standout player, and Nembhard, it really kind of works off of other players. So I'm going with St. Mary's. I'm going with the fact that they're returning pretty much their core, except for Logan Johnson. All right, how many at-large bids in this conference?
Well, I know there's going to be at least one, and that's going to be the loser of Gonzaga and St. Mary's. It's just who else falls in behind them, which I really like. Loyola Marymount and San Francisco's up there as well. I don't think both of them would get in. I think maybe it'd be one, and I'm actually going to give the nod to Loyola Marymount. Although that's
so
not.
You think this conference is going to get 3 bids?
No, not 3 bids. I'm just saying after those are the teams I think would slide in next. But I only see this being a 2-bid league, as oftentimes they are. Right. I know there was an anomaly 4 years ago when you had a BYU and a San Francisco get in, which, to be honest with you, I don't really know what that San Francisco team did to get in. They had a neutral court loss to Grand Canyon. They didn't really have a great win. They didn't beat Gonzaga.
That was a controversial. Yeah.
Now, they produced one of the best first-round games we've seen in a while with Murray State. But you look at that resume, Rich, what the hell did they do to get in? I know this is 2 years ago we're talking, but I don't know what they did to get in, and then they realized, they said, oh, we're comfortably in the tournament. They mailed it in. They sat Markovetsky in the championship game and just kind of mailed in the West Coast championship because they knew they were going to make the tournament. Completely besides the point. That's just me ranting. Right. But that year was kind of an anomaly to what the West Coast has been getting, the 4 bids. usually this is a two-bid league. You know who the heavy hitters are at the top of this conference. And once again, I think that's who will make it.
Yep. All right. I agree. I think this is a one-bid conference. I think Santa Clara, for example, was the third place team in this conference last year, was a lot better than USF or Loyola Marymount are going to be this year. And they didn't get in. So I think there's just a really big drop off. I agree that USF and Loyola Marymount are going to be fighting for third, but I just think they're NIT bound. All right, player of the year.
So for me, it's a 2-horse race. But if I'm going to stay consistent with my picks and what I think how this conference is going to go, I want to give the nod to Ryan Nemhard because straight up, I think there's a real argument, or lack thereof, that he's the best player in this conference.
Yes.
I don't really know how much of an argument that is. He's going to come in very good in the Big East. He'll come in and run away and dominate this conference. But if St. Mary's wins the regular season in a conference in the West Coast that's been dominated by Gonzaga, then somebody from St. Mary's will end up winning Conference Player of the Year, and that player will be Aiden Mahaney if that's the case. So I'm going to go Aiden Mahaney, Player of the Year. It's more so just if the Gales can win the conference, a player from that team will win the West Coast Player of the Year. So I'm going to roll.
No, I get it. And he is, as I said, the leading returner in usage percentage. So both of your picks today, you went with the leading returner with usage percentage to win the Player of the Year. I think it's a 3-team race. Mahaney, Nebhard, and I'm going to throw in Anton Watson, though he's probably not going to get the votes because he's not a flashy type of player, but he's a winning type of player. He does all the things you need to do. He does all the dirty work, gets the steals, gets the blocks, get the rebounds. But ultimately, I agree. Nebhard is the best player in this conference. Probably hedging my bets a little bit here, picking St. Mary's to win the conference and Nebhard to win the MVP, but I'm going to go with Ryan Nebhard. So there you go. But we both picked St. Mary's to upset Gonzaga. What will Drew say when he hears that? All right, Jake, it was fun. As always, I want to thank our listeners and I want to thank our special guests today. We had Tre Coleman and Tyson Degenhart, both from the Mountain West Conference. I'm happy they joined us. And if you ever miss an episode, you can get caught up at hoopsprospects.com. You can also, if you want to get your questions read in the mailbag, please contact us via social media or send us an email at admin@hoopsprospects.com. We'll be back next week. More conference previews, another college notebook, another NBA notebook. And Jake probably won't be back next week, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm going to have to take a hiatus until football season's over. I'm running myself into the ground. I consumed a downright illegal amount of caffeine today to keep myself going. I had like the equivalent of like 6 to 7 cups of coffee today. And I don't want to have to do that every day. I just needed it to survive.
That's going to dehydrate the hell out of you.
Yeah, I've been good about drinking a lot of water.
Oh, okay.
Which has been good. But yeah, so I want to be alive and healthy for college basketball season when it rolls around. And if that's what I have to do is take a hiatus, then I will rejoin right before feast week when it becomes good.
We will be happy to see you, my friend. You will be missed. You're one of the brightest young up-and-coming minds in college basketball as an analyst, not a player. And we will miss you. But we understand, and we don't want to see you get sick. All right. We'll see you in a few weeks.
We'll do. Rich.
All right, buddy.